Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Psycho from 1960. So, this movie not only went on to have a number of sequels after it, but then also we are to have had a remake of this film in 1998, which in all honesty is a really copy and paste like attempt. If you went on and you watched the remake, it basically is to be identical to its original. May have been a little bit updated, but like really it's almost the same. We also are to turn around years after that and put together a show called Bates Motel. When I was to go on and watch Bates Motel, I felt right away in the pilot episode, I was like, man, like this show is freaking brutal and kind of surprising. And so more than likely I would probably want to go on and watch more of the show to get a clear consensus. So if people like Bates Motel, I'll go on and check it out, because might as well. But so for and also in Psycho 2, like the sequel to this movie, the whole premise of that film is we have Norman who ends up coming back after it seems that he is to get a clean bill of mental health, and it seems like he is to be just Norman again, until the further and further we get in that film, we start to realize that Norman is slipping and sliding to be back to where he originally was. And so yeah, so that's the sequel movie. But so we go on, and this film, what is this film about? So we go on to have Mira, who is to be working at this bank. She is to come into a large sum of money, of which that I will explain a little bit more when we get into spoilers. And Mira is to go on and state that she is to leave after supposedly depositing this money, because Mira is to mention about a headache. And so Mira is to then go on and just go home, and is to realize she has this envelope full with a large sum of money. So Mira is to then try and deliver this money to a location of which that she was designated to do so, and all of a sudden her boss is to be walking by and notices Mira's car. So that is to go on to have Mira have a number of suspicions about why Mira's boss was looking at her so strangely. So we go on to have Mira, who is to run away with this money, thinking that maybe her boss had already gone on to call the authorities about this missing amount of money. So Marion goes on to make her way to the Bates Motel and is to meet up with Norman, who is to offer her food and so on and so forth. So Marion then is to want to go on and take the shower, and come to find out we have Norman who is to spy on Marion through this hole, through this painting. So we obviously have Norma, who does not approve of Norman looking at this woman or being interested in this woman. So while Marion is to go on and be in the shower, Norma is to go on and stab her and kill her. Which leads Norman to then realize that Norma had brought blood into his household, and he needs to figure out why, which goes on and leads him to then have to figure out what he's going to go on and do next with Mira's body. And so this is to go on and lead to an investigation. This is to go on and lead to a number of people coming to the Bates Motel, and this is, of course, to lead to other dead bodies that are to happen within this story, to then leave us with then Lila and Sam, who are to go on to make it to the Bates Motel, to desperately try and go on and figure out what had happened to either Mira or other people who had died. And so that would lead them to also make a drastic discovery for Norman Bates. So, with that said, I think after that, I think I'm just going to go on into spoilers. This movie is available on Peacock right now, but I'll also give you a free option so you can easily go on to watch this film elsewhere for absolutely free. The grading of this movie, I would say that this is to be a solid okay film. Of course, this isn't to not be my favorite black and white film. I, of course, am to thoroughly enjoy The Creature of the Black Lagoon. And I think that that film should be frickin' remade because that movie in black and white looks frickin' amazing. And could you just imagine what they could have gone on and done in current time? Probably not make that movie as good as its original, but man, is A Creature of Black Lagoon just so good. I really enjoyed it. And so, with that said, what is the free option? So, you can go onto several apps that I've dare in fact used over a long stretch of time. And so the first app that I would go on and mention that is currently available on the Google Play Store to the second this recording is an app called Doxy, Doxcy. The next app I would go on and recommend is Play, UHD. Those are 2 words, and you can go on and search these words and find a app with a logo that says Fox HD Movies on it. Go ahead and click into that and download it, and you should be able to easily be able to see Psycho for absolutely free. Whether it is to be the original or the remake, whichever you want to do, because they're both the same anyways. You can also go on to, of course, apps like 123 Movies, which, gotta be honest, 123 Movies is kinda like, you gotta find the right 123 Movies that actually works. There's some times where either servers do not work for that app, or at some point you'll go on to find that like you can't access the content on the app. So for whichever one you have to kind of make your way into, you'll eventually find the right 123 Movies. And then lastly, I would go on and recommend a app called Yes Movies. More than likely, you might go on to go into a Google search instead of just a Google Play Store search, because I have yet to go on and see a Yes Movies app that works in the Google Play Store, but I haven't searched for very long. You might go on and find an equivalent of Yes Movies that'll actually work, but at the end of the day, I think it's about that time to just say, let's go into that double 5 time territory. It's about that time yet again to just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, at the very beginning of this film, we, of course, are to have Marion, who is to be in this hotel room with a guy named Sam Loomis. And so Marianne is asking Sam, when are they going to run off together? When are they going to finally just tie the knot and so on and so forth? And so Sam is mentioning that there is just some things to tie up with his wife. Stuff like alimony or a number of other things just that he has to go on and he has to deal with, and like they can't just go and run away together. So we then go on to have Marion, after going on and sleeping with Sam, she then is to go to her bank job. So we then have Marion who goes off to this bank job and is complaining of a headache. And so we have two men that come in named George Laurie and Tom Cassidy. So Cassidy comes in and is to state that that I believe his daughter is getting married, and that, or Cassidy's to mention that he is to be buying something for, I believe, his daughter. And so he is to have a massive amount of money that he is just kind of throwing around in front of Marion. And Cassidy is to mention that he likes to buy people's happiness. And so we have Cassidy who is to go on and give Marion this money, and George is trying to figure out some way to get rid of it or to put it in some uh, kind of account or something somewhere, because this, of course, is a bank that they're working at. So George is to tell Marion to get rid of it and then have a receipt to have gotten rid of it. And so Marion goes off to uh, like go back with George, who is talking to Cassidy, and Marion is complaining about a headache. We have the coworker that she's working with, uh, Caroline, who is to like want to give her medication for this, but we have Marion who mentions that like headaches won't go away for her as easily as something else. So we go on to have Marion who is to leave for the day, and she is to take this envelope of money with her. So come to find out, she is to get redressed and to drive off to this bank to deposit this money, and all of a sudden we have George who is walking by noticing Marion. And he's like, huh, like I thought she was home, like I thought she was sick. So Marion all of a sudden is to think that the reason why George is looking so perplexed is that it's because of the money. How Marion had possibly forgotten that she had this money with her. And so now Marion is to drive and run away from this town as far as she can get. And Marion is to have driven for so long that she then is to get so tired and fall asleep while parking herself on the side of the road. We then have a highway patrol officer who is to pull over to then be knocking at this door or this window. And Marion is to wake and then try to drive off, and the highway patrolman is like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. So we then have Marion who is to pull the window down and is to start talking to the officer, and that of course leads the highway patrolman to just want to see her ID, because everything that he is like talking to this woman just sounds suspicious, just sounds weird. And so we go on to have this highway patrolman that at some point is to just consistently follow this woman around. Come to find out, we have Marion who goes to this used car dealership or whichever, this used car lot, to go on and exchange her car for another one for $700, because she ends up trading in her car, and then it's like, okay, well, like $700 and this other car is yours. We have this highway patrolman that is watching Marion go on and trade this car in, and so Marion then drives away, and the highway patrolman stops following her, just kind of drives off. It's like, okay, like there must be something okay with this woman. So Marion then makes her way to the Bates Motel, where of course she is to end up waiting for someone to come down to assist her at this motel. So Marion is to kind of look at the house and realize that there is to be a shadowy woman figure by the window. So Sam ends up coming down and is to tell Marion, it's like, well, hey, I'm sorry. Like, it must be pouring down so badly that I didn't hear anybody drive up. So we have Norman who takes Marion and is to give her the number one key. And it seems that Marion is to go on and ask if there is any like food areas nearby. Norman ends up mentioning about a diner, and so Marion is like I'm not really interested in making my way all the way up to a diner, and so Norman is to state it's like, well, hey, I can make you like a meal like right here now, like share a meal with me, and Marion ends up taking Norman up on that offer. So we have Marion that goes on to make this unusual, like, is it butter and bread that she just eats? And so while we have Norman watching Marion, he is to go on and realize that Marion eats like a bird. And so we go on to, of course, have Norman talk about his taxidermy and that it seems that his leisurely activity is to become a thing that is to be a thing to uh, kind of stretch his days because he has nothing else really going on. So like it's to be like all consuming this activity. And it seems Norman is to mention that there's only like a certain number of items that you need to become a taxidermist, and he starts rattling them off. So we then are to go on and have Marion talk about how she wants to go on to a private or secluded island. And so we have Norman who is to go on and talk about his mother, and that his mother, he is just kind of start to complain about her. And so Marion is to go on and say it's like, well, hey, like why don't you just like send her away somewhere? And so Norman is just like, well, like if anything, like she just kind of goes mad. Like we all go a little mad sometimes. And so the funny thing about that line that Norman delivers is the same line that ends up getting used in the original Scream movie, where Billy turns to I think it's Randy, the guy who's Jamie Kennedy, and is to say, yeah, we all go a little mad sometimes, and that's when we realize that he is the villain of this story within the original Scream. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Scream, it's been out for a decade or so. So, probably a couple decades. It was done in the 90s. So, anyways, so we then have Marion who is to get so exhausted and so tired that she is to want to retire to take a shower and then go to bed. And so while Norman was to try to get food for Marion, Norma is to be very upset with Marion, and as well as Norman for wanting to go on and produce food for her. So Norman, it seems, is looking through this hole that he had made in this wall spying on Marion and seeing her undress to go into her shower. When Norman had to go on and explain Marion's room to her, he was to go on and state it's like, well, yeah, that room is, or that door is for the, and she's like, shower? And he's like, yeah. So what ends up happening is we have Norma who ends up becoming jealous of the fact that Norman is hosting a woman technically. And so Norma is to make her way into Marion's room and into her room that is to have her shower in it, which is, of course, a bathroom. And Norma starts stabbing into Marion, killing her off here. She is to, of course, Marion try to grab the shower curtains, I think, to try to get back up. Then she ends up kind of falling further out of the tub, and she obviously is dead. So when Norman is to make his way back into the house, he's to realize that Norma had tracked in blood throughout the house. So Norman is now upset with Norma for all the blood that she is to track into the house. So then Norman then turns around and is to figure out where all the blood came from, and is to, of course, have come from Marion. So Norman does whatever good little boy would, I guess, do to protect his mother. And so Norman is to go on and take this shower curtain and get rid of the body. Taking everything of Marion's and putting it in her briefcase, even the newspaper that is filled with money that Marion was trying to hide and put in this newspaper. So Norman then goes on to put Marion in the trunk of this car, is to put the briefcase in the trunk of the car, and then dump it into this swamp. So Norman immediately thinks that this is to all be over. Come to find out, he would be wrong. So we then go on to have Detective Milton Arbogast, who then is to go on and start to do an investigation, a private investigation, because, of course, Cassidy had gone on to call Milton to have at some point this investigation be done. So I'm assuming it's Cassidy because he's a rich guy. So we have Detective Milton that is to go on and meet with Sam Loomis, who is to go on and have Lila also at his place. Lila is to go on and ask Sam if he knows anything about Marion's whereabouts, and Lila is to state, well, hey, like, I'll go on and I'll meet with Marion anywhere, and if she tells me to, like, get lost, then I will, but at least I'll know that she's still alive. So Sam is to not have a clue where Marion is, and if he would go on and know where she is, he would obviously just state. He would obviously just tell them. So when the private investigator, comes in and starts asking these people questions, they seem to not, of course, have any real answers. So we also had Sam, who was to tell his person working in the shop to leave and take his lunch with him, as, of course, like he wanted like some privacy to talk to this woman, and not only that, this private investigator. So we have this private investigator who decides to continue to go on this investigation, which ends up leading him to the Bates Motel. And so this private eye goes on to talk to Norman, and so Norman has at some point where he is to mention that he hasn't had many people come in a couple of weeks or so. And so when the private investigator starts looking through the ledger of a number of people who have gone on and signed in, we have this private eye who's like, well, like, we have a Marion here, but like, and it also looks like Marion's writing, but I'm not quite sure. And so the private eye starts asking Norman questions, and it seems further and further that this private eye is to ask Norman. It seems that Norman is to make these little slip ups that make this private eye, Detective Milton, want to ask, even like, wait a minute, like, you just said this, like what? Like, no, like, you just like lied about this. Wait, no, 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 no. So the more and more that this detective starts pulling apart this story, the more that Norman has to go on and tell seemingly his own truth. That Norman was to go on and see Marion, but she was to leave early the next day. And that also Norman was to go on and talk about his mother who did not like Marion. And the private eye is like, wait a minute, like, so should I go on and talk to your mother? And Norman's like, yeah, I wouldn't want you to do that. And the private investigator is like, well, do you want me to have a warrant to do that? And Norman's like, sure, I would. So the private investigator goes on to find this phone booth to confirm to Sam and Lila what he had found and that he'll be back within the hour. And so, but the detective is still just kind of scratching his head. He's very much just like, you know what, I just want to talk to the mother. Like, I want to see if maybe she had an answer. So the private investigator tries to make his way to Norman's house to try and talk to this old woman, and that just leads to when this private eye is to find Norma, he is to get more than he is to want than just asking questions. Instead, we of course have Norma attack this private investigator, stabbing him in the face, having this private investigator fall down these flight of stairs. And in all honesty, I really thoroughly love this visual of this private investigator like falling down this flight of stairs. The way they do it, I think, is so cool looking. I don't care that it was done in the 1960s. Like, that imagery, that approach just looks so like cool looking still. Even though it was done in 1960, it still looks interesting. So the private investigator is to now die, and we have to naturally assume that Norman had gone on and dumped this body into the swamp, like, of course, Marion. So now we have both Sam that are like, okay, this private investigator, he said he would be back within the hour. He's not back yet. So Lila and Sam go on and meet with Sheriff Al Chambers, to then talk to him and come up with some theories of what could have possibly happened. And so Al Chambers is to talk to both Lila and Sam and state, like, well, maybe there is some truth about what Detective Milton had gone on unsaid, but maybe also Detective Milton is chasing down this 40 grand and he wants this massive payout. And so maybe he had gone on to chase after this woman, and who knows what could have happened after that. So it seems since Lila and Sam, after talking to the sheriff, it seems are to not really get much of anywhere. Even when the sheriff is to go on and call Norman and is to ask him about this in private investigator, and Norman is to say, it's like, oh yeah, like this guy left already. And so really they have to take it for Norman's word. And so Lila and Sam decide that they're going to go on to go to this Bates Motel themselves to talk with not only Norman, but at some point Norman's mother, Norma. Isn't it kind of interesting how we have the mother and the son who almost have the same exact name as one another? It seems so weird. So, but I guess it can technically make sense for what happens at the end of this film. So, we have Sam and Lila who make it to this hotel. They end up getting another room. I think this was room 10 that they got. So, Sam is to talk to Lila and come up with a plan that Sam is going to figure out a way to distract Norman, while Lila is to go on and look around and go into Norman's house to find this old lady. So, because they've gone on and they looked into room 1 and they couldn't find anything, so we then go on to have Lila and Sam. Sam is going on and distracting Norman, and Lila is to make her way to Norman's house. Sorry, I had a little bit of a cottonmouth moment there. So, we have Sam and we have Lila. So Sam is talking to Norman, and Sam is assuming that Norman himself had killed all these people so that way he could get the 40 grand for himself. Because Sam has this cockamamie idea that Norman is to want to branch out and start setting up franchises for this motel, and he would think that $40,000 would be enough to do so. With how unsuccessful the Bates Motel really isn't, why would Norman turn around and want to have another motel? It doesn't seem quite rational to me. But Sam can realize that it's rational somehow. So, and who also would go on and, like, hold up that motel? Like, would his mother have, supposed mother, go on to have the one motel as he is to go on and have the other? And then when she croaks, who's gonna... But anyways, so Norman is talking to Sam, and the further and further this conversation goes, the more that Sam is talking about the $40,000 and what is he going to do with all that money. And Norman's like, what are you talking about? Because we also go on to have Lila and Sam who are to notice this piece of paper, this little small piece of paper in room number 1 that is to have mentioned the $40,000 minus like the $700 that Mirren had spent on the car. So Lila and Samus realize that, oh my god, like, more than likely there's evidence here stating that Mirren was here. So we have Sam who's talking to Norman, and the longer and longer they have this conversation, the more that Norman kind of wants Sam to leave here. And the best way to kind of do that is to now ask where Lila is, the woman that Sam was with. And so Norman is to then realize that Lila had probably made her way back to his house. And so Norman starts fighting with Sam to get this pot and knock Sam out. Norman then rushes off to go back to his house to try and figure out where Lila now is within this home. And so, come to find out, Norman is to stash Norma in the fruit cellar. And so Norman is to pick his mother up and take her to that location. And it's only going to be for a couple of days as this investigation seems to be going on. And so Norma is upset by having to do this, but she agrees. So we then have Lila, who is to make her way throughout this entire house to then go to the fruit cellar, to then go on and find out that Norma is to be down there. But it seems that what we see here is not exactly a skin and bones actual person, but instead just a skeleton. So just bones and a wig and a number of other clothing that is to look like someone is going on and wearing these things. So Lila goes on to freak out about a skeleton corpse that is right in front of her. And then all of a sudden we then see Norma coming out of the shadows and Sam being right behind her trying to stop her. And then come to find out, we then realize that Norma is Norman and Norman is Nora. And so cue us now going and having both Lila and Sam now at this police station arresting after the arrest of Norman Bates. So we have this Dr. Fred Richman who goes on to explain to these men that are in this police station, as well as Lila and Sam, that Norman had and had not killed Moira, or Moiran. Yeah. So that, in all honesty, there are some times where Norman is not be fully Norman, and then there's sometimes where he's also fully Norma. And so at certain points this doctor is to mention that this person has a split personality, and the officers are like, well, hey, like, so you're gonna go on and tell me that this guy's crazy so he can probably get some plea deal? And the doctor is just like, yeah. So the doctor is to state that Norma is to have taken over, and it seems that Norman may go on and no longer be no more. And so we have Dr. Fred Richman, who is to have Norma explain everything that had happened in full-on detail. And so Richman is to state that Norman had figured out a way to not only dress like his mother, but sound like his mother, and to the point to where he just became his mother. and his mother had gone on and killed these people, and Norman had cleaned them all up. So, and that everything would probably go on to be revealed within this swamp. So, we then go on and have Norman, who is just Norma at this point, who is to mention that she is not going to go on and move. She's not going to go on and even crush this fly that's right in front of her. So that way, anybody who is going on and still watching her will notice that she won't even swat a fly. That all the evidence is going to state that this woman, like, oh no, like this woman couldn't have gone on and killed anybody who is now technically a man. So we have, after that, we have the scene where they are to go on and pull the car with this towing mechanism, and it just reveals the words "the end." And so we naturally assume that everything was just wrapped up after that. That Norman was to be put away into a mental hospital to where he was to get all the care that he needed to lead him into the sequel where he is to be coming back to the same hotel, the same home, seemingly rationally sane again, or sane whenever he ever was. So that was to lead us off to the sequel that was originally done uh, after this film. So with that said, I'm just going to go on and get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Psycho, if you went on and saw either the original, the remake, or even the Bates Motel. Let me know about any of those. Let me know if you want me to go on to review any other Psycho-related things, because I would gladly go on to do so. I've already gone on to review American Psycho, which isn't the exact same thing, but hey, it's a word that has psycho in it. Isn't that wonderful? Kind of funny about the American Psycho 2 sequel, where it had like Mila Kunis, and really it was like desperate to just tie the original American Psycho into that film, and I thought that that was kind of funny. Because really it was to just be its own thing, but then they desperately just needed like a movie with like name recognition or whatever to like give it the extra advantage to go on and uh like get more notoriety or whatever. So anyways, with that said, I'm just gonna go on and get out of here. Goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.